You're looking at a legend, pure Class A power, built like a tank. But can this 1970s icon beat the precision of its modern successor? I'm putting the Yamaha CA-2010 and the AS1200 head-to-head, old school versus new tech. Specifications are compared and features are discussed. Add to that bench testing along with real-time data capture. Get ready for the ultimate hi-fi showdown. If you haven't already, please subscribe. How did we get here? In 2020, Yamaha recognized there was a resurgence of interest in vintage audio equipment. People wanted a large, heavy, aluminum face-plated, big knobbed, heavy switch piece of equipment and throw in those analog meters for good measure. There was a market for it, and they came out with a line of integrated amplifiers, including this AS1200 and receivers. And this AS1200 looks very similar to my CA-2010 that came out in 1977. It also has specs that are very similar to my CA-2010, along with some big surprises. And it's a 2-channel, no built-in DAC, no Wi-Fi, no HDMI inputs or anything else, pure 2-channel analog. This could be 1977 again, and it could be sitting on the shelf instead of my CA-2010. The retail price for an AS1200 is right at $3,300. Back in 1977, a CA-2010 retailed for about $750, but keep in mind, with inflation adjustment, in today's world, that $750 would equal about $3,800. So you can see that no matter if it's today or if it was almost 50 years ago, a quality piece of audio equipment was not cheap. What I was really curious about when I put this video together was how was the vintage amp going to compare spec-wise with the new amp? I was very surprised on what I found out. What I found out was, in many aspects, the vintage amp outspecs the new amp. So the CA-2010 has better specs than this AS1200, 50 years apart. And I understand we don't listen to specs, do we? But I expected after 50 years of engineering improvements, component improvements, etc., that there'd be no question that the amp that was developed 50 years after the other one would spec out better. But it doesn't. Let me show you what I mean. So here are the specification sheets for the CA-2010 and the AS1200. You guys have got specs just like this with your equipment. Usually the top spec is the output power. And just like it is here on the 2010, it's 0.03% distortion, running 20 to 20, both channels driven. Over here on the AS1200, same spec, but 0.07 total harmonic distortion, twice as much. Another common specification is frequency response. And I'll circle them on both sides, then come back over here to the 2010. Here it's got 3 different specs, phono 1, 2, RIAA deviation, plus or minus 0.2 dB, moving magnet, moving coil. And you come over here, and here's the deviation, same spec as this one right here. Phono moving, it's exact same spec, but it's 0.5 dB. It's over double. You've got the frequency response of the amplifier. 5 hertz to 100,000 hertz, plus 0, minus 1 dB. Over here, it's plus 0, minus 3 dB. I just find this bizarre, frankly. You know, I would think these would all be backwards. What else we got here? Power bandwidth. And again, this has Class A and Class B. And I'm looking at just Class B because the AS1200 doesn't even allow you to run in Class A. So Class B, 10 hertz to 50,000 hertz, 60 watt output. And where is it over here? Here it is. Power bandwidth, 10 to 50, same. And it's 0.1. It's 3 times the distortion of the 50-year-old amp. I'm just, amazed by this, frankly. I really am. And you take a look, I was talking about Class A. The CA-2010 will run in Class A with a flick of a switch. There is no Class A over here on the 1200. Another thing, you can adjust your input sensitivity and your impedance on your cartridge. Over here, it's fixed. On the 1200, down here, it's fixed. Now, this is probably okay. It's nice to have that flexibility. You got a different cartridge, you can adjust it to 47, 68, or 100,000 ohms with a moving magnet cartridge. Here, you're stuck. You're stuck with 47. The 2010 gives you 3 choices. You've got 1 over here. So I'm just surprised. I would think these would be almost backwards from this. Now don't get me wrong, I don't think that the AS1200 is somehow inferior to the CA-2010. I think it just shows how good the vintage stereo equipment was, and still is, and how unique that is in history for electronics. That an electronics product that was produced 50 years ago can still hold its own and then some against its modern counterpart. There are a couple specifications where the AS1200 beats the CA-2010, and one of those are damping factor. I don't want to go off in the weeds of what damping factor is, but the larger the number, the better when it comes to amplifier specifications. And in a nutshell, what it does is it allows a better control of the drivers in a speaker, and specifically a better, tighter bass performance, and just more accurate. The second is residual noise. The lower the number, the better. And in this case, the AS1200 is lower than the CA-2010. And what residual noise is background noise, made by the components, made by the power supply ripple, poor shielding. It's any noise that gets amplified by your piece of equipment and you end up hearing it in your speakers. Anything other than the music that you'd like to be hearing. Ahead, I'm going to show you the Class A performance of the CA-2010 and also show you how it performed on the test bench. But first, I want to talk a little bit about the CA-2010, comparing it to this AS1200. As I mentioned earlier, we don't listen to specs. I get that. I've got some vacuum tube equipment that sounds great. They don't have wonderful specifications, and I can't ever remember sitting down to listen to anybody's stereo, my own or anybody else's, in a store or at a friend's house or wherever, and saying, you know, that doesn't really sound all that great. What's your specifications on that? Or, boy, that's the best I've ever heard. What are the specs on that? I've never done that. But whether it was back in the day of the CA-2010 or it was recent when the AS1200 came out, these products were engineered with specs. A design engineer sat down, mechanical engineer sat down, and they used specifications to build both of these pieces of equipment at a price point that Yamaha thought they would sell. They then pass those specifications on to you in your owner's manual. And there's always been comparisons with specifications. And that's exactly what I did earlier in this video. I compared the specifications on these two amplifiers that were 50 years apart in time. And to me, it was surprising that the modern amplifier didn't outperform the vintage amplifier in spec-wise in every category. The AS1200, I've never heard one. I've never seen one except on the internet. It may be the finest sounding amplifier there is. It may blow away my CA-2010. But other than damping factor and residual noise, and I'll give you, those are two important specs. On paper, it does not outperform my CA-2010. The one spec that can't be compared is that the CA-2010 is 2 amps in 1. And here's that switch I mentioned, right here at the front of the unit. You can go ahead and switch it from normal to Class A. Now normal is running in a normal AB configuration just like the AS1200 is. That's a nice feature to have. So what's the difference between a Class A and a Class AB audio amplifier? Really, in a nutshell, it's all in how it's biased. In Class A, it's biased on continually. Doesn't matter if your amp's at idle or you've got it running at 100%. It's always running at 100% no matter what. So you turn on that Class A amp, you walk away, come back in a couple hours, it's on fire, even though you haven't been playing music. Now, if you sit down and play music, it'll still be on fire. But it's just continually for that entire 360-degree cycle of the input signal, it's going to be always on, no matter what. In Class AB, the transistors are biased on for a little bit more than 180 degrees of the input signal. So that's much different than the Class A that's floored all the time. This gives it an opportunity, the power transistors dissipating its heat through the heat sinks, and that's why they run cooler. Many of you have Class AB equipment. Most of mine is Class AB also. And for you guys who have equipment where you can touch your heat sinks, some pieces of vintage equipment, the heat sinks are on the outside and you can touch them. You know they're warm. You put your hand on them and they're warm. Now, the harder and longer you run that unit, the warmer they get. But they never get so hot where they burn your hand, or if they do, you've probably got an issue. Except on the test bench, where you push these pieces of equipment a lot further than you can ever push them with normal music signals going into them. Ahead, I'm going to show you how the Yamaha CA-2010 performed on the test bench when it was pushed hard, both in Class AB and in Class A. But first I want to show you my Pioneer Spec 2, which is a Class AB amplifier, but I think it's a very good comparison where the Class AB amplifier has to really be pushed hard on the test bench to get hot, compared to the Class A amplifier, you've just got to turn it on to get hot. First up is the Pioneer Spec 2. And this is going to give you a good idea of the temperatures that those heat sinks can get to when a Class AB amplifier is pushed pretty hard. The Pioneer Spec 2 was produced from the middle 70s to the late 70s, and it produced 250 watts per channel into 8 ohms, so it was a big boy back in its day. I'm going to show you over an hour of testing in less than 1 minute. The vertical column's the temperature, the horizontal column's the time. I started to ramp up the amp after it sat for about an hour, and I just kept increasing the wattage. And you can see on both the Spec 2 and also on the meter to the right how the wattage, I just keep increasing it, 5, 10, 20, 30, 40. I went up to 60. And then you could see how quickly that the temperature spiked up. The temperature rose very quickly, 120, 130, 140. And then, when it finally got to 150, I thought, I'm going to back this thing down because I could not even touch the heat sinks for a split second without burning my finger. And as I started ramping down, the temperature still kept climbing. It took several minutes for those heat sinks to start dissipating that heat and for the temperature of the amp to come down. At home, you're never going to run your amplifier like you just saw what I did on the test bench with the Spec 2. If you were doing 60 watts continuous at home, that amplifier would be trying to put out hundreds of watts. Just think of you guys with power meters. They go up, they go down, they go up, they go down. Now think if you had a power meter like the Spec 2's and the lowest you ever saw it was 60 watts. Far exceed the output capabilities of even a big amplifier like the Spec 2. So under any circumstances, a home user is never going to see the temperatures that you just saw from the Spec 2 if you're playing just your music at home. If you do push an amplifier way beyond its specifications, you can expect the amplifier to clip, and you can expect your speakers to probably fail. So in conclusion, the only way for this Pioneer Spec 2 power amplifier to get dangerously hot is for you to make it get dangerously hot on a test bench. It's just not going to happen under normal operating conditions. Before I show you the extreme heat that my CA-2010 can operate under, let me tell you a little bit about my CA-2010, how I obtained it, and what's been done to it to where I feel comfortable pushing this amplifier like it was brand new in the 1970s and not 50 years old. I purchased this amp from Facebook Marketplace in July 2018. Then I did what I always do. I got in there and I changed out those old electrolytic capacitors, reseated the power transistors and put in new insulators and thermal compound, did a few adjustments, cleaned her up, and then she was ready to go for another 50 years. And you guys know me, before it was music time, it was bench test time. And like most pieces of vintage equipment, it easily beat its specs. At 1000 hertz, Class A, it clipped at about 40 watts a channel. It's rated at 30 watts a channel. In Class AB, it clipped at just under 150 watts a channel, rated at 125 watts a channel. It took some abuse on the test bench to get the Spec 2 heated up. The Yamaha CA-2010 is a different story. It can get hot during normal operating conditions. Maybe I should have used a different word other than normal operating conditions, because the switch that allows you to run in either Class A or Class AB, when you're in Class AB, that's normal. And the CA-2010 seems to run like a normal Class AB amplifier. Class A is another story. Let me show you why. Okay, now I'm powering up the CA-2010. It's on. And as you see in the graph, the temperature is just slowly going up. We're in Class AB mode. We're in normal, what they call normal, and we're just going up slowly. Now, after several minutes, I went ahead and just flicked it into Class A, which is causing the heat sink temperature to rapidly rise. Take a look at that graph of the temperature as it's rising. It is going almost straight up. And keep in mind again, this is not with any input signal. This is with the volume control at 0. This was just putting it into Class A. It is now 115 degrees. Now at about 120, I touch the heat sinks and it's getting warm. And this has all happened in just a few minutes. As you saw earlier, the difference between a Class A and a Class AB amp is that the Class A amplifier is on all the time. It's floored all the time. It's running 100% all the time, no matter if it's got music coming into it or not. As you saw a few minutes ago with the Spec 2, you had to pretty much abuse it on the test bench to get it to heat up like this. But as we're approaching 140 degrees, it's getting warm. And I'm putting my hand on it now, and I can't keep my hand on the heat sinks for very long. I have to get them right back off because they are definitely hot. As you see, we're still going up. We're going to get up to a point here at about 145 degrees. At that point, the graph starts to flatten out. So it's not going up anymore, or at least it's not going up rapidly, and I decide enough's enough. Go ahead and put it back into Class AB mode. So I took that switch and put it back in normal. And you'll see right away how the temperature starts to drop off a cliff. It just is falling. It's down under 140, and you can see it's rapidly going down once you take it out of Class A. Now it's in Class AB. No music's playing. Again, this volume 0, it's just sitting there. So a Class AB amp, it's going to go back to its normal temperature. I just personally feel a lot more comfortable with having this amplifier on all day long, having it run at a reasonable heat level. In Class A, I can't imagine leaving it on all day like that, even though it was engineered to do it. And what can you say? It's still here 50 years later. There's no warning in the owner's manual about running it in Class A for some limited amount of time. The only thing it says, just like every owner's manual, allow adequate ventilation. 145 degrees, 24/7. No, I'm not going to do it. The heat sinks just seem incredibly small for a Class A amplifier, and even for a Class AB amplifier at the time. This is a pretty small heat sink area. Bigger heat sinks would have helped out, I think, or a fan would have helped out also. And it's not only the power transistors who are attached directly to the heat sinks, it's all the components on the power amplifier assemblies that are subjected to very high heat. Is it 145 degrees down in there? I don't think so, but it's substantially warmer than I would like my components to be. So I think you guys can see, except for short periods of time and doing tests like this, I'm leaving my CA-2010 in normal Class AB amplification. Also, I did all these temperature tests with the top cover off. So that had to make a few degrees difference in what I would have read if I was measuring it with the cover on. The ventilation in this unit isn't wonderful either. It's really got a pretty small opening at the top. So I think Class AB is the way to go for anybody who owns this amplifier. Unless you need a portable room heater, then I recommend Class A. So obviously there must be some other purpose to Class A amplifiers than heating your house, and that is that the sound quality. Many high-end amplifiers are Class A amplifiers. They have the lowest distortion. Many audiophiles think that they're the purest sound. That's just something you got to decide for yourself. Now the cool thing about the CA-2010, you've got them both. So you get to experiment, you get to try to listen to it in Class A. Can I hear any difference between Class A and B? You're probably thinking, well, Chris, can you hear a difference? You got one. I think I can. And I say that, but I'm not betting anybody any money. It sounds a little bit more detailed to me. Everything seems a little bit clearer. But is that in my head? Maybe. But as I just said, I don't run this amplifier in Class A for long. So I think they should have made a lot bigger heat sinks or put a fan in this unit. So who's the winner in this comparison? As you guys know, I'm into the vintage stuff. My CA-2010 had a big advantage starting out because I'm into the vintage audio equipment. I don't have much in the way of modern audio equipment. And I had all but crowned the CA-2010 as the winner of this comparison, in my opinion. But I started to do some research on sale prices of both the CA-2010 and also the AS1200. And I got quite a surprise. At least with the AS1200, I was able to find those for $2,500 brand new in the box. USA warranted, 100% legit. And so right there, earlier I'd mentioned they're $3,300 and okay, now they're $2,500. And in addition to that, I found many used ones in the $1,500 to $2,000 range that were perfectly good units. When I'm looking at $1,500, $2,000 for a used one or $2,500 for a brand new one, that makes me think a lot more favorably of the AS1200. The CA-2010 in today's used marketplace, an operating one at a minimum is going to be $1,000, and at $1,000 it's probably not going to be operating very well. If you want to go and get a train wreck of one, maybe $500 and hope for the best, but an operating one, decent operating one's going to probably be $1,000 to $1,500, and a restored one's going to run you a couple thousand or maybe even more than that. Pretty much these two units are in the same price range today. In this Battle of Titans, round one ends in a draw. While I'm talking about cost, I'm thinking about value. What is going to be the value of this equipment down the road? For me personally, I could care less if this equipment goes up or down in value. I didn't get into the hobby for that reason. I wasn't thinking about that when I was a teenager and I was going to the stereo stores. I didn't care about the value of it. I liked the stuff, and I still like the stuff. So I'm not going to look years from now and say, oh, I could have sold it for 50% more. No. There are better options than vintage or new electronics to invest your money in. If you're going to purchase a piece of electronics, buy it because you like it, and you'll never be disappointed no matter what you paid or no matter what it's worth down the line. After careful analysis, round two also ends in a draw. Reliability and repairability. First of all, with the vintage audio equipment, we all know it is quite reliable and it's quite repairable. It's proven that over many, many decades. Now, there's no reason to believe that an amplifier like the AS1200 will be any less reliable. It seems to be a very well-built piece of equipment, and you can expect many decades of service from it. With that being said, whether you've got a vintage piece of audio equipment or a modern piece, one day it's going to fail and it's going to need to be repaired. And can it be repaired is the question. We know the vintage equipment can be repaired because it's been done for decades now with only a soldering iron and a desoldering tool. Modern electronics like this AS1200 is a different ball game when it comes to repair because it's all surface mount devices, SMD, you may have heard the term, and it requires specialized workstations, hot air workstation. You got to have a microscope, very, very tedious small work. It's not going to be something the average person with a soldering iron and some solder wick and a solder sucker are going to be able to repair. You're just not going to be able to do it. You can't. Round three is scored a draw, with the CA-2010 coming out strong with its repairability, with the AS1200 coming back late with its modern circuit design. This battle ended in a draw because I think either one of these two amplifiers would make a fine addition to anyone's two-channel system. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up down below. For you non-subscribers, I'd really appreciate a subscription. And for my present subscribers, as always, thank you so much. You all have a good day.